For more on this, we're joined by Yousef Alshammari, President of the London College of Energy Economics. Welcome back to the programme, Yousef. Now, given Japan's history with the Fukushima disaster, what specific safety reforms have been implemented to convince a sceptical public that the world's largest nuclear plant is finally safe to restart?
Good morning, and very happy to come back to TRT. It's mainly related to the seismic activity and the resistance of nuclear plants towards the tsunamis and seismic activities that are quite active in that particular region. Let's remember in the Fukushima Daiichi accident, which happened back in 2011, was not really an accident that hit the reactor core itself. What happened is the tsunami drifted the pumps, and that led to a supply disruption of water. So the water supply was cut. That keeps the reactor core cooled, and that led to, of course, to a meltdown due to, of course, no water being supplied to the extremely hot reactor core, and that led to the explosion that we saw, the hydrogen explosion that we saw in 2011. So the reactor itself did not have a major technical issue. It was the, let's say, the logistical issues related to the tsunami itself that led to that disaster. So I believe, but anyway, they will have to convince the public in Japan, and I believe it's mainly around the seismic activities and other safety protocols that they have to comply with the IAEA in order to enable Japan to restart such a quite a sensitive facility in that particular region.
Right, and how is the surging energy demand from AI data centers and big tech investment fundamentally changing nuclear power from a public utility now into a private energy source?
Well, it's quite significant because AI, of course, is booming, especially in the US, in China. In fact, even Europe is also following. And that means we need reliable and affordable sources of power. In areas in the US where data centers are being built, we see power prices reaching 300% increase. And what that means is there is not sufficient energy supply. The current short-term solution is natural gas, but on the long term, nuclear is seriously being considered. But one data center, in fact, will have a consumption of at least 100,000 household power consumption. So it's quite significant thinking about the future long-term strategy to meet power demand coming from power centers. So essentially it means that countries that are able to produce power cheaply and reliably will be the winners in order to in fact, provide the data required for the AI revolution. But here, nuclear is, of course, is an essential part, but it takes years to build one nuclear plant, given, of course, also the other challenges related to nuclear fuel waste, the recycling of nuclear fuel waste, which is an issue that is not 100% being tackled. So I believe here there has to be a mix of solution whereby we look at natural gas, nuclear, and renewables as well. In fact, even some other forms of hydrocarbons that will all have to come into the mix in order to keep power prices affordable.
And with Russia dominating the nuclear export market in developing nations, is the West losing its strategic influence over the global energy transition?
Well, to a certain extent, this can be observed, given the fact that Russia controls something like 25 to 31% of global uranium conversion and enrichment, so making it indispensable, of course, as an essential part in the global uranium supply chain. Yet we see Russian projects for Rosatoms in many places, especially in newcomer countries, whether it's in the Middle East, in Asia, And that means that Russia is essentially having quite an influential role, in, especially in new coming countries. Uh, of course, Russia also is a leader in technology, but there are some obstacles here. And one of the major obstacles is the geopolitics. Let's remember that Russia has a war in Ukraine, and it's undergoing significant sanctions. So, of course, even countries that are now dealing with Russia, even for example, in terms of energy imports, are in fact vulnerable, or in fact subject to facing sanctions. So I believe that the West is trying to control that Russian dominance, but essentially it plays a role that cannot be neglected.
And looking at the safety of all of this, can we truly rely on nuclear power as a long-term climate solution without first solving the permanent challenge of radioactive waste management?
Well, over, let's say, the short and medium term, this is possible. But talking about the long term, I believe it's going to create a significant nuclear waste that will have to be tackled. And it is not only an environmental issue, but it's also a security issue, because nuclear wastes are usually being stored under extremely severe security protocols. All have to be monitored by the IAEA. And I believe here, of course, you also have the Western powers really monitoring the nuclear fuel supplies, especially where how the waste is being managed. So it is going to create all forms of issues, whether it's environmental or security, especially in countries that do not have access to nuclear power. Even countries that have guaranteed access to nuclear power, including Europe or the US, will have to find a permanent solution to nuclear waste. So I think it's an issue that will ultimately be a significant obstacle for large-scale implementation of nuclear power to meet AI and data center demand growth for power.
Right, Yousef Alshammari, President of the London College of Energy Economics, thank you very much for your analysis.